So, Stephen McGuinness, you're very welcome to the Bulletproof Dad podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Really appreciate it.
I'm buzzing to get through this with you today. Before we go into the thick of the work you do, you are essentially the General Secretary of the PFAI. Will you tell us exactly what's involved with that and what the history of the PFAI, just to give us a little sense of the work you do?
So the PFA in Ireland was set up in the mid-60s. So there was a group of players who felt that their rights and conditions were difficult at best, and Jimmy Hill, who was famously a guy in the UK who actually would have done a lot of Match of the Day, people would know him from that. Yeah, but he was the one who broke this sort of from a wage point of view, broke the cap, and that was over there. And basically he was invited over to Dublin to bring a team over to play a game in Dublin, to have an event in Jury's Hotel afterwards, and in the Gresham Hotel afterwards, and the fundraise to set up the Players Union here. So that was done in the mid-60s, and the association was founded and set up, and its main role was to represent and protect professional footballers and look after their interests. So it really sort of floated along for quite a while until sort of the 90s, where Frank Gavin got a hold of it and really professionalised it and linked it in with SIPTU, which is the big trade union in the country, and got offices in Parnell Square. And then I would have got involved myself then in the 90s, and we developed it onto it being a full-time operation with full-time staff. And then about 15 years ago, when Abbottstown opened up at the FAI, we moved in there. Okay. And the sole role of the association is to represent professional footballers, male and female, in Ireland, to look after and protect them and ensure that the working conditions they've got is the best and conducive to them to having the best career that they possibly can have.
And is it specific to the League of Ireland and the Women's League of Ireland, or like say if I was an international player but possibly playing in the UK or maybe in Italy, do I fall under that bracket? Or is that separate?
Yeah, no, two international teams, and obviously famously we represent the women's international team in 2017 when we went on strike with them. So the image rights of the players is key. So the image rights of the international team, men's and women's, and the image rights of our members here, that's key to the running of the association from a day-to-day perspective. So that's where our funding comes from, and they're very much part of it. Obviously representing them when they are at clubs outside of Ireland. Our full men's international team are all abroad, and 95% of our women's team are abroad as well. So they obviously assist us in regards to how we do our funding. So they are members of our association, and but the representation for them, as you can imagine, is not that difficult because they don't really have massive issues. They have people who negotiate. Karen Midler negotiates the deals with the FA if they qualify for major tournaments, but we're there to support them and to help them if they need it.
Well, that's like just as a like perspective, there wouldn't be many trade unions that would have, say, potential people who are part of it that are on millions and millions every year versus people who are on only like, you know, at the very bottom pile of wages. Like, so you have a big gap there between both. So I'm sure that brings different challenges depending on who you're dealing with.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's really important that people realise as well that from a PFA point of view, the key time for us was myself and Stuart Gilhooly Allure had gone out to meet Robbie Keane out in Portmarnock, and that was a key moment where we needed the image rights of the players to generate revenues, and through the World Players Union, which is FIFPro, and that's what we were able to do. And Robbie was brilliant in regards to assisting us on it, and Robbie had got agreement from all the players that we could use their images to bring revenues in, and that was really when the association really kicked off and kick-started. It's
what sort of time frame was that roughly?
So you're looking at, that would have been 14 years ago. Okay. And Robbie, I never underestimate, like Robbie Keane. So sometimes people, like, I don't know, they definitely don't underestimate him now when you see how difficult it is to score goals internationally. Yes. Why his record's incredible. But from the PFA point of view, I will always be indebted to him. Yeah. And what he did, and to galvanise the players, to speak to them, to say, look, we need to be part of this. We need to assist the guys, to give them the platform to be able to represent players. And the reality was, our international players were never going to really need us, but the home-based player absolutely need us. And we've been able to put in services now that were unheard of before then. So Robbie Keane was absolutely key. And I'll never forget him for it, and I'll never underestimate what he did for us. And I think as I said to you already, people look at Robbie for and may look at issues that he had with the federation recently and whatever else. He's been unbelievable for our association.
That's brilliant, because you wouldn't, when I think of the PFAI, I think about the League of Ireland. You wouldn't necessarily think about the professionals, particularly the guys in the UK that have done very well for themselves. To see how that's all linked now is great to get a perspective on that, because again, I think a lot of people wouldn't realise that.
No.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Just going back to, so you said it started in the 60s. Was football professional, like in the League of Ireland back then? Was it seen as professional?
Yeah, well, what you would have had then, Andrew, would have been, you would have had part-time professional players. So it was only Giles and Dunphy when they came into Rovers did they try and set up a full-time setup. I suppose the reality of the league is the last team to win the league that wasn't full-time from a professional perspective, people probably don't realise this, but it was 1998. It was actually, I was at Pats at the time. We won the league at St. Pat's in 98, and we're the last team to have part-time players to win the League of Ireland. Since 98, every other team that's won it since then has been full-time. And even at that time, we would have had 10 to 11 players who were full-time as well. Okay. So mixed with part-time professionals. So the league since then has its full-time professional players. We're about to make an announcement the next week or two now, where you, to play in the top tier of Irish football, will have to have a minimum of 14 professional players. So we've been fighting for quite a while to try and bring standards into the top tier of Irish football. We brought in the minimum wage a couple of years ago, which is €430. Again, we look to adjust that and get that up again. But yeah, the framework around the professional game is better. As a professional player, the protections that are there now are far greater than they ever were before. And I would see our current standards contract as being gold standard in regards to the rights for the players, the protections that they've got, and the wage that they're earning currently is good. It's good.
We'll get into that, because I know that was a big step a couple of years ago, bringing in the minimum wage. Yeah. Again, like we might reference it as we go along. We've had a couple of lads on the podcast that mentioned, like the Dinny Cork and Owen Erie. They've had great stories of their livelihood going up through the years. Yeah. So we might be able to touch on those. But for yourself, like you said there, kind of late 90s, early 2000s, that's when you were at your pomp yourself of your own professional career. Yeah. What was, like, I'm sure you have a bit of a laugh maybe with some of the current members who might have issues with certain things. I'm sure you're tempted most of the time to probably go, back in my day, you should have seen what we had to deal with and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
What are kind of like, you obviously had a very successful career, like you had a couple of league wins with Pats, and then was it a couple with Dundalk as well? Yeah. Is Pats technically your club though? Was Pats your best time in football as a player?
It would have been. It was the toughest, but it was definitely from a playing perspective. Yeah, it was. To win 2 league titles in the League Cup, the captain of the club as well for the period, was fantastic. The jump to St. Pat's being managed by Pat Dolan, the intensity of it was the thing that blew me away. Like we trained every single day bar Wednesdays, every day. Like, and the commitment from everybody was amazing. And with that came success, obviously. But the union part of me would have looked at it and gone, what is going on here? Like, so I'll give you a couple of little examples. We played Celtic in the Champions League. Okay, so we won the league and the draw was made and we got Celtic. So we were away to Celtic.
Great draw.
Away to Celtic. Flew over a good few days in advance, prepared properly in Jersey Hotel. But we weren't getting paid. Like, we didn't get paid till the first game of the season, which was 2 weeks after that. We'd done a whole pre-season, which was 7 weeks, including being based down Limerick for a weekend and all this type of stuff. And we did not get 1 penny. Like, and it's hilarious.
So just with that, because obviously, like when you played in like Celtic Park, was it been a packed house, like a good attendance at that
70,000,
game? 70,000, yeah. Right. So money was made from that game. Yeah. Where did it go, do you think?
Well, I suppose
surely you were entitled to some of it.
Yeah, but that back then, that was just the way it was. And even when you speak to players nowadays, they find it hard to believe. But the reality on it isn't, I have no problem saying it. The reality on it was we were paid in tickets. Like, yeah. So the way it worked is, if we got a result in Celtic, in Parkhead, we were getting 250 quid for a draw and 500 quid for a win. We drew 0-0 in Celtic Park. Incredible result. But a width of a post, Martin Riley, we should have beat them. So when we came back, we were given 10 tickets at 25 quid each. And that's what he was given as the bonus. Okay, so it wasn't even given 250 quid. Now, that would have irked with me. That would have really irked with me. And that was the start of where I started to question stuff, even internally. But it was difficult because Pat was such a big character and you were desperate to stay in the team. And though I'd had a difficult fourth season there anyway, because obviously you're coming from Home Farm, it was a club that was at before that, and the culture shift, the demands, the physicality of it took me a little bit of time to adjust to it. I got there, but it did take me a bit of time to adjust to it. I took a pay cut to go from Home Farm to St. Pat's.
Wow, that's
and we had 30 we had 30 professional players. But like even the trip to Celtics, it's incredible. Like we go over the place. Obviously we draw 0-0. We're on our way back, right? So as we take off in the plane, obviously we're flying back to Dublin, and after about 25 minutes or half an hour, I'm going, we're not going near the REC. Where are we going? Like, and you could look down, like, where are we going? So lo and behold, we land in Liverpool airport, and I'm going, what are we doing here? Like, now Pat Donlan said a word to us, and we just drawn with Celtic, by the way. Places we're bouncing, right? So we land, and as I land, the plane's landing. I'm looking, I can see Tony Sheridan in the bar drinking. As I landed, I still see him in my head now, sitting at a bar. They had played Glasgow Rangers that night. They'd been 3-0 up and got beaten 5-3. We were picking them up. The rivalry between us and them at the time was at a level that you would not believe. Like, and they fell on.
Who was he playing with at the
So
time?
they were Shelbourne.
Right.
So Shelbourne had been 3-0 up against Glasgow Rangers in Prenton Park in Tranmere's ground, and they had to play there because it was deemed that it would be too dangerous to play the game in Dublin.
Okay, yeah.
So they played there. So we flew down to pick them up. So we then picked them up on the back line. They're fairly jolly getting on. We're stone sober at the front. We land and we're looking at each other, what is going on here? And the deal was that Pat Dolan and Ollie Bourne had done a deal that you pick us up on the plane and we'll let you use Talca Park for the second leg because Richmond was too small.
Right.
So we played Celtic in the second leg.
Christ,
and they're the types of things in the league of world that was going on.
The handshakes.
The handshakes in the room. So the piece of it that I couldn't understand and I struggled with was doing a whole pre-season and not being paid.
Yeah.
So as captain of the club, we played West Ham. Frank Lampard was captain, a picture of it. Frank Lampard was captain. The Joe Cole, the Rio Ferdinand.
They're a really good side.
They're a really good side. We played them in pre-season. We weren't getting paid. Like, the place was packed, 7,000 people. Like, and we didn't get paid. And we didn't get paid the first game. And some of my drive when I came into the PFA then was to change all this and adjust it all. And thankfully, we have done that. But going back to my time, that's where it was. When I started playing in the league, before the Bosman rule, you couldn't leave a club. The people don't understand this stuff.
It's hard to imagine these days.
So when I go into a dressing room now, and I'm not trying to sell the PFA, but I'm saying this is what we do. You're saying to kids, do you realise that back in the early 90s when I started playing, you couldn't leave a club. You were there. Rules said that you couldn't leave. Like, and the Diarra case recently, we'll probably see everything change again a little bit. You know, like, because downstairs is a spar shop. If the girl in the spar shop wants to leave and go up to Tesco down the road, she just give one of them notice and she goes. Professional football, it's incredible that you can't walk out and you can't leave. So Article 17 of FIFA's laws is going to change, and we're part of that. I'm down in Bali in next month with FIFA, with the World Players Union, to discuss what that now looks like. So players nowadays need to realise that the players before them fought to get the rights in. And I always say that when I meet groups of players is you need to leave the game better than you found it. And I felt that when I was playing, I wanted to leave the game better when I finished. So when I finished at 32, I wanted to make sure that the working conditions that I got in, I either maintained or made better when I was leaving. And I think we've all an obligation to do that. And as a guy who runs the union now, I want to make sure that when my time is up with the union, that I have made dramatic changes to ensure that the next group of players that come in have the best opportunity to get to their max. Okay. And just going back to that stuff, the preseason used to just wreck my head. I just could not get my head around the fact that I wasn't getting paid, and I was busting my backside through that period of time. Some of our most important games, which are Europe, and we weren't getting paid.
That's right. It's really hard to wrap your head around that, particularly like the full house at Celtic Park. Like, that's going to generate a certain level of income. Like, obviously, I'm sure the club got paid their cut from that, but it just never trickled down to the players. Is that where the
and
was?
I suppose like everything, like the club needs to run itself. So if it can avoid paying people, it will avoid it. And the rules at the time, and maybe the union wasn't strong enough, the PFA maybe wasn't strong enough at that time to ensure that players did get paid. But that was the culture, that was the way it was, and thankfully the culture is different now.
Yeah, getting 10 tickets, as I said, not even getting 250 quid, 10 tickets as well is pretty grim. Like, and I'm sure you had to give them out free to your friends. You couldn't even charge for it.
Yeah, correct. And look, the club were good to me, and I'm not questioning. I'm just saying that was the culture.
That was the way it was. Yeah, no, it's good perspective. Yeah, that was the kind of commonplace. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to wrap your head around. So, like, getting on to like that step then you made, so you get involved in the PFAI yourself still as you're playing. Yeah. When does it become kind of a full-time role for you then? Yeah.
So just to go back, the joining the union as a player, first of all, it was myself and Owen Healy were going to play for Home Farm down in Cork, and Roddy Collins was there. I remember Roddy bundling me and Owen into this photo booth in Houston station to say, you need to get your picture taken here because you have to join the Player Association. It's really important. So it was Roddy Collins actually, who interestingly was the one who sort of said, you need to be part of this. And there was lots of issues at the time. Some of the stuff I was telling you about doing pre-season without getting paid, and lots of lads had contracts that weren't being honoured and all that.
Was that commonplace across all the League of Ireland clubs?
Yeah, there would have been. It was commonplace that lads were getting paid cash. You would have been lads not getting paid. Medical was a huge issue in the League of Ireland at the time. Getting operations done, lads being left. If you were the top player, you got looked after. If you were the player that wasn't, your operation would have been left, or you would have been going to the matter yourself and checking yourself.
Which is shocking when you think about it. That's really, really
it is.
bad
But that was the reality of it at the time. So that was my first introduction to it. As I went on and obviously went to St. Pat's, Frank Gavin had come out to meet us as a group of players, and I had said, yeah, look, I'll come to the meetings, whatever. So I had a genuine interest in it for the stories I've just told you. I just couldn't understand parts of it, and I didn't feel were right. So I became a delegate at St. Pat's, eventually got in then onto the committee at the PFAI, and then I became chair for about 4 or 5 years. I was chair of the association. And then ultimately an opportunity came up when my career had finished. Frank Gavin had been given, John Delaney had offered Fran the director of the league role. It was around 2005, and Fran had taken it. Our association, we were in debt of about €35,000. We were in debt with one staff member, and we're in Parnell Square. It was bleak. So what I decided to do was I would take it over. But I had a job as a business analyst with Benchmark Electronics, and so I decided that I would do it with parental leave. So I had two young kids at the time, so I took 2 days off a week for parental leave and went into the union and ran it for 2 days and then ran it part-time. Yeah, it was. It was a huge step because
just personally, like, to do that's a gamble with your career.
It's a massive gamble because at the time the job was going quite well. I was moving quite well within the job. But my passion was sport, my passion was football, and my passion was the league, and particularly around players' rights. And Fran had gone, and then the opportunity was to build it. So I looked at trying to build it and seeing where can we bring revenue in, because we're 35 grand in debt. Where can we bring revenue in to stabilise it, number one, offer the right services, number two, and then get the right staff in. So the Robbie Keane piece of it, I had known Robbie, myself and Alan Moore. Alan would have been one of my best pals growing up. Alan had been in the international team, and I'd met Robbie when we were away on holidays, so I had known him already. And me and Stuart went out to meet Robbie, and then the rest is history. Because once you have a revenue stream, and the revenue stream is at a level, you can start providing services. And we were lucky enough to get that, and then the connection with the World Players Union was really important with FIFPro, and that's what drove it on. So that was my route into it, and I'd done it for 2 years unpaid, and then eventually had to make that break to go full time, which was a gamble at the time. Missed out on big redundancy and all the rest, but that's part of life.
You had to go against your business analyst head, I'd imagine.
Absolutely, I remember lying in. I'll never forget it. I remember lying in the house, lying on the sofa, going. I was sitting on about a 50 grand redundancy package, and I knew I would get it. It was contract manufacturing that I was involved in. It was going to go, it was too expensive in order from a contract manufacturing perspective, and we were moving it to Romania, I think. And but unfortunately, a couple of little deals I'd done initially had come back to bite me a bit. So I'd done a deal with Ford, so I was driving a brand new Ford S-Max around. And I'm sure the guys in Bench were looking out and going, this fella's driving a new car, he ain't going to hang around. And I had done a few interviews out because lots of clubs had hit financial trouble at the time. And I remember Joanne Campbell coming out to the job, and I'm outside in the grass area with RT camera, or TV3 camera at the time, doing interviews. And I'm sure the boys upstairs are looking, going, he's going to go here. Yeah. And that money would have been a real cushion to go into the role, but I left because it was the right thing to do. Didn't have that cushion, but I was able to build it. And you know what? I think sometimes, I don't know what other people think, but I think sometimes that you need to have that drive when you're going in. They're not being given that. You got to build it. You got it, and it drives you every day. So the revenue piece of it, I needed to build it, and I knew going in that there was no big budget there. So every little thing I done was to make it better for everybody. And I feel a great sense of ownership to it now because of the amount of work that we all put in. It wasn't just me. There was Sharon Smith, who was in, Ollie Cahill, who came afterwards, and Stuart Gilhooly, and all the other guys that were behind it. But I always work off it. I played at home farm, right? And I used to love you reap what you sow. So you ever see the home farm crest? It's a guy throwing seeds. It is, yeah. And I love it. And I live by that. So I live by, you treat people right, and you do things right, it will come right back to you. You don't do things right, and you take shortcuts, and you don't. I think that's where your mistakes
long term you get found out. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think we've proven that doing things right leaves us in a really healthy position that we're in currently now. But I think I actually enjoy the fact of building it from nothing to where it is today. But that I stand by that. You reap what you sow.
Well, it's obvious talking to you now, like that moment of meeting Robbie, as you said, was a big step in the association and what that led on to. That was about 15 years ago, you mentioned. Like, what were the first, once that happened and the revenue started to then come in from the image rights, what were the first steps you started to bring in? What were the kind of, like, we have to do this immediately? What were the first things you brought in?
Well, I suppose the big thing was to move. So we moved into Abbottstown. So John Delaney at the time.
Are you actually in the offices?
So basically it opened in Abbottstown. Yeah. So anybody who's out to Abbottstown now, it's an incredible place.
I've actually been out there. I did work experience. I was in college out there.
It's incredible, right? But just to tell you, when we moved in first, it was bleak. It was one little road up to this dark.
That's when I was actually out there. This is going back nearly 15 years ago.
Exactly.
So,
it's one little laneway up into this dark, dreary building, which basically, if it wasn't built for the FAI, it was all laboratories. You're going up, oh my God, is this it? Like, but that was the key thing was to get in there, was to try and build relationships when you're in there with the federation, which were going really well. So we managed to get a standard players contract in, which was huge step forward, give clear rights, clear positions for both the employer and the employee, which was the footballer. And we to this day have built on that, right? So that was a key one. The next piece was for me to stabilise from a staff point of view. So we had no staff. So we needed somebody from an office management point of view, need to get somebody in. Me to be in full time, and then to get a player executive to be doing the day-to-day stuff with the players. So they were the key things to get in at first. A lawyer was key.
I was going to say, just the negotiations and the standards you're bringing, is it lawyers, solicitors?
Lawyers.
Who are you trying to bring in?
I'm telling you, the key piece, and this is the key man that we've got, Stuart Galooly, the lawyer. He is the best lawyer in the country from a sports perspective, unquestionably. And he was the real key to it. And the beauty of it now is, so I, at one stage, would have spoke to him every single day, right? We've got so much case law done now, so much jurisprudence that you don't need him as much now because the decisions are already, now he will still be involved. He's on General Assembly with me currently, but a fantastic fella, unbelievable guy who has done it, and no problem saying this, he'd done it for nothing.
Yeah, which is huge.
Which is huge.
Was it love of football for him?
I tell you what Stuart is big about. He wants to look after the little guy. Now, some people like to look after, the big guy.
Yeah. It's definitely more profitable to do it that way, yeah.
Absolutely. And Stuart has lived with it on the basis of the small, he needs to be looked after and needs to be protected. And I think he'd seen it with professional football. He had actually taken a case for Barry Ryan, a teammate of mine who had failed the drugs test, and Stuart had represented him. And that was my link into meeting Stuart. And then from that point on, we speak every day. I spoke to him yesterday. He's an incredible bloke, brilliant lawyer, and would have paved the way for the decision making of the federation now. And he's the one, if you ever look at after General Assembly meetings or AGMs of the FAI, he's the one standing up asking the questions.
Right.
He's a proper, and he's straight. He says it as it is. Has huge respect within the game now for what he has done, and has massive respect from the players. And I wouldn't want to go to war with anybody without. He's absolutely different class and has been the reason.
When you go to war and you're bringing those standards in, are you sitting down, is it the FAI you're dealing with, or are you actually going to like the Minister of Sport, or does it depend on the case?
So it depends on the situations. We've represented guys, whether it's around anti-doping, whether it's match fixing, which will be with Sport Ireland. Majority of the stuff we do internally within the federation, and one of the models that I wanted was to have an internal mechanism in the FAI to resolve all our issues. You start going to rights commissioners and go WRC, they take a long time. Yeah. Professional football's careers like this. It's got to move. We need decisions straight away. And we have timelines around transfer windows. So we with the FAI built an internal mechanism that resolves all the issues. Licensing is key to everything that we do. So club will not get a license if it owes any of our members money. So internally within the FAI,
they have to renew that license every year.
So mid-November. So any money's owed up to that, the club doesn't get a license to compete the following season. And our success rate in this is, and our relationship with Bracey Daniels, who runs it, is really, really good. And I have to say, licensing has been key. Now, we've meetings coming up in the next 2 weeks with the FAI to look at the ownership model and to ensure that gets better. We've got to look at oversight and the situation that happened in Dundalk doesn't happen again. So that internal mechanism was really key for us to ensure that everything was kept within the game, okay? And that we have mechanisms within the game to fix issues, rather than us ending up in labour courts, ending up in cost of high courts. Keep it internally and resolve our issues internally. If you can't resolve it internally, obviously you have that route, but try and make many of the decisions as you can, as quickly as you can within the game.
It's a valid point, because again, time is against you as a player. You need to get it done.
You need it. It needs to be done straight away, because the window, you're only probably at max 4 months or 5 months away from the next window. So it needs to move quickly. And from a player's perspective, we've been lucky, like 6 years since we had any pay issues, and the Dundalk situation currently it is a problem, but there's no money owed currently, and we'll continue to work with the club. So them internal mechanisms were key for me when I was taking it over, to make sure that everything that was in place was done as quickly as possible, as cost efficiently as possible, and that ultimately we've never lost a case. So our track record is very good in regards to how we do. Yeah, it is. Yeah, we've never lost a case, and we tend to not take cases we're going to lose. If we think that we'd say to a player, look, at the position that you're in is this is going to happen, this and this, and you'll always see in it. I think one thing we pride ourselves on is you never see a League of Ireland player sacked. Yeah. There's mutual cancellations done and whatever else, and we come to agreements because the relations with the clubs are really, really good. But currently, we negotiate with the NLC, which is the National League Committee, which is made up of representatives from the Premier Division, First Division, and Women's.
Are they a body of the FAI?
So they are, yeah. So that's Dermot Hearn, who's the former Minister for Foreign Affairs. He chairs it, and we do a lot of work with them. And that committee it can be difficult because you've got people on it who some of the issues that we're dealing with aren't affected by it. So, for example, the women's game aren't affected by a decision that we'd be making at the Premier Division level. So it needs to be looked at. It's a new concept in the last couple of years, and it just needs to be tweaked. I don't think it's quite. It's from a decision making point of view. I think it can be quite conflicted. So I think it needs to look at. But back to your question you asked, that's who we deal with, and that's who we negotiate with. The Minister, Thomas Byrne, who's been at our dinner for the last couple of years, and he obviously would be somebody that we would deal with on the bigger issues. So whether obviously infrastructure, we look at our academy system, it would be something that we would speak to in regards to how that affects professional players, how that opportunity, and we all know Brexit has come. And like what's frustrating around the Brexit stuff is that people, it's as if Brexit just came out of nowhere. Brexit was coming for years, and we never really adjusted ourselves. And I didn't ever like the idea that, and the fact that to develop as a professional footballer, you had to leave this country at 16.
But that was kind of the model, wasn't it? It was like you left, if you had any hope, you went 15, 16 and went over and let the clubs in the UK develop you, and then we'll just reap the rewards at international level. But
and we never prepared ourselves properly for that, and we still aren't ready for that. So if you're a young player in Ireland now, you don't have that opportunity to do what
we actually had a really good example in the gym. There's a good few lads training with me, so obviously Evan Ferguson's having a great career at the moment. Evan's uncle Gordo, you probably know Gordon, Barry's brother, he's trained with us a long time, and at the same time as well, if you know Jamie Mullins, he's gone over. So Jamie's dad Ken is with us as well. So Gordon and Ken will know each other well. They're training with years in the gym. So, but at the time they were both playing with Kevin's. They were both 16 and they were both wanted by Brighton. But Brexit landed just at that time. Evan was able to go because his man was English, whereas Jamie wasn't, so Jamie had to hang around, so he's gone over now. But like again, there was Jamie did quite well. He went to play with Bowles and he good time there before, and he's over there now. But again, because of Brexit coming in, it delayed his transfer by like a year and a half. So like I think that period is kind of what we're talking about here, isn't it? That kind of that 16 to 8, like obviously the pathways that we can look at grassroots from 4 or 5 years up the whole way up, but that's a real key period that we didn't have to worry about before, whereas now was massive for us, isn't it? That kind of 15, 16, 17
and when you say we didn't need to worry about it before, it was a worry to me because I didn't think it was appropriate to be sending a 16-year-old over to England on their own and expecting that they're going to become a professional footballer.
If anybody listening to this podcast hasn't listened to Keith Tracy's story, if I Keith in here talking about going over 16, he's a great example of what that's like.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I'd got friends, like I went to Patrician College, and I made my decision on where I went to school based on the fact that Patrician College, that Ronnie Whelan had gone to school, Martin Russell had gone to school, Pat Fennell had gone to school, and I went there, and pal of mine, Alan Moore, two of our best mates, Alan went on to be a professional footballer, but went at 16. Difficult. He found it hard.
That was who Owen said was his best player he ever played with, by the way.
He's unbelievable footballer. Probably underestimated a little bit, and he's at Bowes now. He does a bit of analysing for Bowes. Great fella, great player, unbelievably talented footballer. I was lucky enough to be knocking around with him as a kid growing up in Finglas. Darren Grogg was another one that hung around with us, and I suppose from my point of view, I thought everybody was as good, as us, and we were probably better higher than the level maybe around. But Alan going at 16, from a skill point of view, wasn't. I'd be interested to see did he think it was the right thing to do? Now look, he done really well, broke into the Middlesbrough first team. I'd gone over loads of times the same, but I think it's very young, and I think the current model is better. The problem we have with the current model now is we have lots of players now going to let's say Portugal, Italy, Germany. How much better is that when now they're going to a country where they don't even speak the language?
Yeah, true, yeah.
But what we have to do here is have that ability to allow a child or a player at 16 to be able to train full time and be educated. Now, that to me, I mean, you talking here, surely that we can do that. Like, that's not rocket science stuff. Like, and this is where Thomas Bourne and the ministers, and it's Thomas now, maybe somebody else after him, have to look at it and go, okay, if we're going to compete, and it's a game that unites the whole, I think it's the only game that unites the whole country when we qualify for major tournaments.
The country stops.
Yeah, it's the only sport that does it. Nobody else does it, right? And we are leaving ourselves in a position that unless we invest in this thing, and we don't have the clubs don't have the revenue, I don't feel, to run academies at the level we need them at right now. In time maybe, but right now we don't. And Mark Canham has come out, it's 10 million is what is the figure that's been bandied around. Now, it'll be interesting to see what actually comes. There is something coming. What it's going to look like, I don't know. But we absolutely need to invest in that underage. We are miles off where we need to be at. And I don't like the decision making that's going on right now of young players and their parents. What we're seeing, and what I'm saying right now, is we have young players signing professional contracts at 16 and giving up skill in Ireland, right? And that is a disaster for me. Sometimes it happens. So an example is Sam Coors. So Sam was a Colossian to me in Navan, leaves school and goes full time at St. Pat's. Now, it's worked out. He's a Premier League footballer, Sheffield United. He's out on loan at the moment. Great guy, good family. I've spoken to his dad a load of times. His younger brother is in Colossian to me as well, Cole. Looks a really good player too. But if that doesn't work out and you leave school, why are you coming back to it? Like, and we really do need to look at it. Like Mason Mead is another one now, and there's another one, Noonan at Pats as well, who are at TY years, and they're going in training full time. But we have to give our best young talent the opportunity to train full time and to be educated. And we need to come up with a model, not next year, 2 years, now, to give these players the opportunity. And that's the biggest challenge I think Irish football has right now.
In the short term, I think France have a model, they have like a school, it's like a sector, is it Bloemfontein, is the centre of excellence. The kids go, they all go to the school and they train as professionals. That to me seems like maybe a logical step where maybe wherever it's Abbottstown or somewhere else, they actually build a school and you get the elite to go there. Is that what you're kind of thinking in the short term?
I think that's what we're going to see, right? So I think what we will see in the short term is that the best young players, for I think it's 45 days in the year they're not in school, that they will be based in Abbottstown. So Dublin-based players will commute in, the country players will have to stay overnight. But that's what we've got to do now. Because if our clubs and our clubs currently can't provide that, we're going to have to provide it, the federation. So, the federation are going to have to provide it in days where they're not in school. Our coaching our training hours for our players are nowhere near enough. I think it's at about 250. It needs to be close to 1,000. Like. Okay. So we need to, we're miles off where we need to get it. So that is a way of bridging it. But if you're a young player and you're not in the international setup, well then you're again another bit behind. So we've got to bridge it. There's a plan there to do it, but it does need government to wake up. Like, with all due respect, 10 million to the government is buttons.
Yeah.
It's absolute buttons we're talking. And this resistance to it. And look, the legacy of the FAI, and we all know it. People who listen to this will know the legacy of the FAI on the line, the debt that it's in, right? But young players shouldn't have to carry the weight of that debt. That debt was done, bad mistakes by people who thankfully are gone from the game now and hopefully we'll never see it again. We have a federation that's run better, okay? Now, again, there's always improvements. There has to be, and there will be, and there is. But young players shouldn't have to suffer for that. Young boys and girls in this country should have the opportunity to be the best players they can be. And that's what we need government to do from now. And not keep looking at the federation, go, you wouldn't trust them with the money or whatever the case may be. We have to give the best young players an opportunity to reach their potential. That's a huge ask. And if government have that better oversight on the federation, well, then that's what they've got to have.
Now, this is a big if, but if it was a case where you got the funding that you needed, or Irish football got the funding that it needed, what would the ideal model be long term? Is it that the clubs have the money to set up their own academies? And
absolutely,
go that route?
But they're full-time academies. They're not part-time academies. They're not kids training at 7, 8 o'clock at night for 1 hour and a half in Astro.
Yeah.
That's not going to develop players. What you're talking about is the same as what Robbie Keane and all these other guys, when they went to the UK, the education of football is run parallel. That's what we need. And we need it. Our Premier Division academies for sure. And below that if we can. And like, there's a huge, obviously, row at the moment in women's football, and there's obviously Eileen Gleeson and Kieran Kilduff have had words about, the players who don't make it into the international squad. Where is that gap? But we don't have it for girls either. Like, and the girls' game, you can actually make that gap up even quicker. But we really do need, and there's big decisions made around summer football that we all play off the same calendar. That's an issue at the moment. In Waterford, you can't play competitive football till you're 11. In Cork, there's 1 week on, 1 week off. There's such, the length and breadth of Ireland, it's so fractured.
Would you like it to see summer football across the board? Would you?
Yeah. I would have been one in 2003 when we started. I was playing at the time. I think we just won the cup. Yeah, we'd won the cup with Dundalk actually. And so it was like a shorter season to roll in to have a summer. And it would have been a little bit, but I knew for us what was going to be the positive for us and the League of Ireland was we were going to be competing in the summer. So, training in the summer. So when Europe came, we were in the middle of the season instead of where we were starting. And because we went full time, you couldn't compete. 5 group stages later, it's the right decision, right? The training areas, facilities were better because obviously you had
pitches
summer,
were better.
Pitches were better. But I do understand administration-wise. I understand the resistance from some leagues because you've got people who traditionally in the summer would be off on their holiday from their jobs, don't want to be doing administration jobs. But I keep going back to this. The only thing that's the most important thing is the player. What's the best for them?
Player?
And if we look at that as the central piece, and that's the North Star, so our North Star is the player.
That's your go-to on every decision.
That's your go-to on every decision. So every decision you make has to be that. And when I'm part of General Assembly, and we got correspondence last night from the President saying that the board have now backed it. Now I'd question why the board aren't putting this through and putting it back to General Assembly to decide on it when we already know the opinion there is quite fractured, is that when people make that decision and when we're voting for that, we've got to keep going back to what's the most important for the player. And once we make that decision, that's best for him, then we can all stand over, that's fine. But somebody who tells me that playing sport at a time where potentially we have bad weather, bad pitches, facilities, as we already know, from a light point of view, we don't have the facility, we don't have the Astros, we don't have floodlights. Playing it surely in a period of time where that makes that easier is the right thing to do.
But you see it even local GA club here that Dan's involved with Fingalians, they have to bring out like the floodlights onto the pitch at night, like portable floodlights and stuff like that. And then like you can go a month without playing a game if the weather's so bad, like the likes of December, January time, it's just raining. And
I do understand the competition with GA is difficult. I get it. Like our games program is better than theirs, than the GA's. It is better. But it can work together. But our games program is a game every week. GA is a different program, as you know. It's hurling, football. And our games program, and I see it now myself, that the games program means that you've got, from a player point of view, and you want to develop, the games program in football is better. And we've got to make sure that can we harness it, can we work with the GA and work with other sports to ensure that we work together. But if you park all that for a minute and say, what's the best for the player? There isn't a person that can argue with me that's not better for the player to play in a calendar season. There's nobody can argue it. Now, the administration, all that stuff, that's a different argument. Somebody said there's no argument that can't be better for the player. It's that simple.
It's tricky. Like I know a good example, we're talking about this with people coming together and thinking for the bigger picture. Like I know there was a big thing so it's only just kind of passed now. The talk of like Shells and Bowes sharing the new stadium and Daleyman Park, and like I think logically that made fantastic sense. You know, you sell Tolka Park, you make a fortune on the land that's worth, and then everyone goes to share a stadium, and it's so easy to manage. You see clubs all over Europe do it. So logically it makes sense. Business-wise it probably made sense as well. But emotionally to certain fans and people that wrapped up in football, like a lot of Shells fans didn't go for it. And you can understand why, because that Tolka is their home and they don't want to share it with a rival. I think that's a big part of an issue of this that maybe you don't get in other businesses as such, as when you're dealing with football, there's a whole lot of emotion involved that you mightn't get in other industries. Is that fair to say?
It is, yeah. Like we were talking about Dundalk earlier, it's 121 years of history. This isn't a business that was set up 2 or 3 years ago. The decision, I could understand it. I'd understand it as a fan, because if I'm moving to somebody else's patch, you're feeling you're going to lose your identity.
Yeah.
It's theirs. It's not yours. So I absolutely got that one. I actually thought if that was going to work, you would have to build somewhere else.
Separate one, yeah.
Exactly. Build it separately, and then both, so Milan or whatever, who've done it, AC Milan and Inter, that was the only way that was going to work. And once that wasn't on the table, it was never going to work. Yeah. And I think logically everybody saw it and said, yeah, look, understand it. Yeah, no problem, move on. This stuff, where we're actually talking about people making decisions that's best, like we're not talking about moving grounds here. We're talking about moving dates.
Yeah.
Like we get lost, get caught up in the whole. We are talking about moving a date. We're not talking about anything else dramatic here. We're talking about moving a date. But It's a big one actually. It'll be a huge decision when it's made. 2026 is when it's looking at. We're looking at a third tier in the League of Ireland. There's lots of stuff happening in football now, which to me looks like progress.
Would that third tier be like a reserve, an A team or a reserve team? No.
That'll be. I think what you'll see in it is areas of Ireland that doesn't have a League of Ireland team will have it. More Midlands teams, I would hope. Some college teams. Parts of the country like Donegal, that and Sligo that would maybe have another team, because what we have got in the League of Ireland currently is lots of good young players, but not a huge amount of opportunities to play.
Yeah,
so it is interesting.
Clubs, yeah,
if you look at Shamrock Rovers, there's a little example. Shamrock Rovers, you've probably a better opportunity to play at the group stages of the Conference League than you have playing the league, because the reality on it is because of the rules around UEFA and homegrown players, that the squad has a lot more younger players in it, while the manager can pick, a far more experienced team in the league. So that's the reality of it. And we need to find a place for our best young players to play in. And it probably leads to the fact that our managers are under such pressure to get results. Yeah. They don't have time to play.
You can't think long term football.
Not in Ireland anyway. So blooding a 16, 17 or 18-year-old is very, very difficult. Pats have been able to do it with Mason Melia this year. But again, they've brought in one or two more senior players, and they've played a lot more of the games recently. So you can see the difficulty for managers, and we need to find somewhere. And I think a third tier would be an opportunity for some of the bigger clubs to push their players down and to play regular football. And I think obviously that league also would be good for referees as well. So
true, yeah.
From administrators, that they can develop in that environment and then look to move on. So I think it would be, I think, the third tier, a developmental league. Selfishly, from my point of view, I would like it to be a league that pushes the bottom of the first division. I think what I see in the first division is lots of clubs with very few professional players, because there's no relegation. There's no relegation, and it probably needs that. You need that drive to push them on, because I think there's a bit of stagnation now in the bottom end of the first division, where clubs are just nearly ticking boxes to be around. What are you actually doing? And I think if we have a third tier where there's teams there that want to come up, that are progressive, that pushes that league better, well, I think that's
healthy competition.
It is healthy, it is healthy. Without putting teams out of business, I think it's healthy.
You need, football needs it, to be honest. You need consequence at the end of it, to be fair. You mentioned there, you're talking about also a big part of what you do is working with the women's football team as well. There's obviously a big case back in, they went on strike back in 2017, and you were involved in those negotiations, weren't you? Can you talk a bit about that? Because that was quite a landmark case at the time.
It was, yeah. So 2015, I got an email from Emma Bourne, who was the international captain at the time, the goalkeeper, and she said that she wanted to meet me. They'd had some major issues. So myself and Ollie Cahill had gone to London at PFAI Awards, which she was attending. So we spoke to her at that, and were shocked by the working conditions that they were in, and nobody understood it. And
this was playing with the Irish international team.
So nobody understood how bad it was. So we sat down. Now this doesn't happen overnight. This took 2 years to actually get to the point where the players were going to make a stand on this thing. So we spent the bones of 2 years working out exactly what had gone on, how to make it better, meet the players and meeting with the federation to see if there was any movement from their end.
What were one or two maybe examples of what you were told that they had to do, or what?
So equipment was tracksuits. So they had to give the tracksuits back in the toilet. So when they landed in Dublin Airport, so they would have been on a Ryanair flight from wherever, they would have come off, and they would have to go into the toilets in the airport, take the tracksuit off, have their own clothes in their bag, and then put their own clothes back on.
Jesus Christ,
and then for the girls who were, at the time, there would have been probably maybe 60 to 70% of them in the league here, and 30% abroad. So they would then put on their normal clothes, hand the tracksuits back, and then head off. There was no loss of earnings, no match appearances, no win bonuses. There would have been issues around Wi-Fi in the hotels that they stayed in. It would have been very, very amateurish.
So if I wanted to play for Ireland, I would have had to take leave off work and probably possibly lose money depending on the job I had and stuff.
Yeah,
as well,
and depending on the amount of games, you could be out of work for over 30 days.
Yeah, you need a very understanding employer. That to try and progress your own career professionally, you're very limited what you can do.
Yeah, and they would have been players like at the time. You're looking at Anya O'Gorman, Karen Duggan, Julianne Russell, who's obviously doing really well for Ireland at the moment. The girls who were based in the UK. And I suppose what we were able to do, so what happens is players come into camp, are fuming about the setup and no, and then what happens is they all just break away and they don't get back together for maybe another 3 months, and then they come back together 3 months, and then it's crap and then they go. There was nobody to pull it together. So all I was able to do was to be that one that was able to pull it together. So I was able to, with my staff, go in, meet the players, and then meet the home. So we would have met Anya, Karen, and Julianne out in the Golden Ball after training when they were training with their clubs, and sat down and really worked out what the issues are here. We would have surveyed all the players, spoke with them all collectively, and then got the players then to bring it to the FAI, because we didn't want to be jumping ahead. Let them try and get as far as they can, and then if they can't implement it, then we'll go the next step. So one of the key ones at the time then was Anya had gone and met the FAI to go through it, Rue Doctor, and it was pretty much rejected out of hand, saying, no, we don't have the money to do it, can't do it, no, we're not doing anything. So we then met, and I then wrote to the FAI saying, as representative of the women's international team, I want to meet you now to go through this with Stuart. And then we got correspondence back saying, we don't recognise you as their representative. And I remember sitting in the chair in the office at the time going, now I'm in the building with you. You're talking about these.
I was going to say the canteen was probably a good crack.
Which is where we met at this. So 15 yards up, the thing is the office of the guy who's just sent me this email, which was Peter Sherrard, who ultimately now is head of Olympic Ireland, right? So I then walked up at the canteen, and just by chance, he happened to walk in. And I says, Peter, what's the story with that email? And he says to me, well, look, do you know, don't take that personally. I said, I'll absolutely take it personally. Because what you've just sent to me is telling me who I can and can't represent. So what's to say that in the next email, you don't say, here, I don't recognise you as representative of the men's league here. I'm not having that. Like, you're not going to dictate to me, nor is the Federation, nor is John Delaney, on who I want to represent and who I should represent and who I can represent. Have you got that? So Peter, yeah, and off he went. So that was the line in the sand then. So then we decided, right, not only is this important from the women's side of the game, this is important in general. Nobody's going to tell us who we can and can't represent. So from then, the gloves were on, and it went really bad after that. So we then put it to them. I think they thought that we weren't probably going to go a whole hog with this thing, and they underestimated us. Yeah. And what we did was we flew the players in ourselves. So what we decided to do was give them every opportunity to fix it, which they weren't. They weren't engaged. They didn't want to talk, so that's fine. So what we did was, on a Slovakia international game, friendly, we flew the players in ourselves, and we kept them in a hotel, because we knew that if they landed and went into the hotel, they had them, they would get them to play. So we basically flew every player in ourselves at our own costs, kept them up in a hotel in town at our own costs, and then rolled them into Liberty Hall, and then told the world what has been going on. And women's football from that moment to now has changed dramatically. Within 4 years, we've qualified for a World Cup. We're on the verge of qualifying for European Championship. We've equal pay between men and women. They fly on chartered planes now to games. And surprisingly, they're winning football matches. Isn't that amazing?
And they get to keep their own tracks.
But the reality is it needed that leap of faith. Now, the knock-on effect of that for us was the men's game did not move 1 yard for 4 years.
Okay, yeah.
So we were in a situation then where everything fell apart then. John Delaney wouldn't speak to us.
Relationship was over, yeah.
Over. Yeah. Little things that he'd done. So we had seats in the president's box, obviously representative of professional footballers, gone, taken. We were invited to nothing. Everything was
petty
taken.
Stuff, like, yeah.
So in the building, the staff of the FA were told not to speak to us. So we would have had people walking the opposite way, so they didn't have to walk by our office because they weren't allowed to stop and say hello.
Yeah.
And there was strict instruction. So we used to run a training camp in Abbottstown. That was stopped. We used to have kit and footballs that players who were out of contract, trying to assist them to get a job.
Yeah.
Everything was pulled. So everything was taken back, which was petty and ridiculous, but that's what it's done. So for the benefit of the women's game, the men's game stood still for 3 or 4 years. But behind it all, we knew that we'd done the right thing. That for the players, that they knew that no matter what, we're going to take a stand. And we will, to this day, I'll never have ourselves compromised in any shape, way or form. Because when I took the Youth Association, we had no money. John Delaney had met me and spoke to us about getting funding off the FA. And I knew from the start, if you take money from anybody by your own sources, you are completely conflicted, which is how he ran and how he controlled the whole game.
He knew what he was doing with that offer.
He had everybody on toast. So he had everybody funding. He had them he was giving money to everybody to keep them all on side and to keep his vote on side. And he realised the League of Ireland's vote was so small.
He didn't need it.
Didn't need it. Yeah. And we were just a part of that. But So once we kept independent, we could make every single decision independently. And because our revenues had got up to a stage, we were financially rock solid, legally rock solid, and we could take any case we wanted. And that's what we did. So, we were in a really strong position to take that position with the players. And as I said, everything changed after that. And thankfully, his time came to an end as well.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if you went through when there was no money for the women's football team, if you had a look at where money was going elsewhere in the association, I'm sure you'd be able to find what
it was amazing how quick he made
tracksuits at the very least.
It's amazing how quick he found it.
Yeah,
like he found the money quick enough when it went on strike. And I think the thing that hurt his pride more than anything was he had just been voted onto the UEFA Exco that exact same time. So when the decision in regards to the strike, so when we were in the hotel negotiating it, he wasn't around, so nobody could make a decision. So we were having this standoff because he was the only one. There was nobody empowered to make decisions by him. He's over smoozing with UEFA Exco, or UEFA to get on the Exco, which is a huge big deal, by the way, to get on it. And he came home to an absolute shitstorm and going to himself, I'm sure going, well, I'm going to get you now for that because I should have been come back to glory instead of come back to a load of people complaining about women's football. And his legacy had been damaged, and we were seen as being the reason for it. So everything for the men's game would have stood still for 3 or 4 years. And that was facilitated by people who to me were guys who I'd worked with for years, like Frank Gavin, like somebody close friend of mine, guy I looked up to, guy who I soldiered with the union to get standard players contract and ours, and he ended up then turning against us and made it really, really difficult. Now, get on grand with him now, obviously, but that I found that
it's a great example of the work that goes on, and it's just for perspective of people listening to this and what's involved. It's a good, not just a story because there's obviously substance behind it, but I think there's probably a lot of pride in it yourself personally when you've seen them qualify for the World Cup.
I was hugely emotional. I have to be honest, I was hugely emotional. I have to say, I went down to Australia. I was down in Australia for the games, and I got hugely emotional after I spoke at a few conferences in Amsterdam about it, and obviously people understand because the women's game was just starting to evolve and move at the time, and I was hugely emotional by the whole thing because I understood how brave the players were to make that stand. It's hugely
it can go one way or the other.
It can absolutely, and to be honest, I mean, a lot of people who didn't think, like, there was this sort of thing thrown at us as well. They don't deserve it. Like, what did they bring in? What did women's football bring in? And I said, you've got to invest in it first before you see a return.
Exactly.
But people don't see that.
You can't just invest in something when it's already making money or like making revenue. If you want something, any sort of business will tell you that you have to invest first before you start expecting returns. Like, it's just basic.
Exactly. But you've got to back it, and not just back it in the short, back it in the long term.
Yeah.
And like the frustration that we had was they just didn't see it. Like now, thankfully, it's saying now. Like at one stage, we had a sponsor for the women's team, not for the men's team. That's how much.
That was
that's how much bigger it has got, and it's. Hopefully we play Georgia obviously coming up, and then depending on who we play then, we're hopeful that we will get to a European Championships, which at the moment looks a long way off for our men's team. But that I felt that I didn't need a huge investment. If we took over Federation tomorrow, the first thing you look is women's football because you can make that jump really quickly. Like the men's game,
it's growing all over the world as well.
It is. Our numbers are huge, and we just have to keep it. We just need to make sure that we continue to invest in it. We continue to monitor it and continue to make sure that we're growing it. And our role in it at the time was to make sure that we gave the girls the platform. That's all they wanted. Like all they wanted was a platform to give them the best chance.
Yeah.
And that's all they asked for. And we eventually got there. But
in any business, I think that's a fair request to have. Like,
it's a basic.
Another big one I'd like to talk to you about as well is the step that's brought in with the minimum wage the last couple of years. Can we just discuss that? I think it's 430 is the magic number. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's at the moment. It will go up, but it is at that figure now. So the thinking and the negotiations around this was that we were seeing an abuse from the clubs in relation to, so when you sign a professional contract, you are retained up to the age of 23. So you can be, if you sign your first contract and you're on, let's say, 150 euros, which was what a lot of our players were on, you can be retained on that amount till you're 23 years of age. A part of the minimum wage was also that every player had to be paid from the start of pre-season, and everybody paid till November 30th when the window shut. Okay, so
when does pre-season start officially?
So pre-season would normally start. Now will start in the first week in January, and it will run. Season finishes end of October, start of November. But we wanted to build in holiday pay, so there's 1 week break in the middle of the season, and then 3 weeks at the back end. So that's your holiday pay. So we want to pay to November 30th, and this is where you give credit to some of our bigger clubs. So the likes of Anthony Delaney at St. Pat's and Danny Lambert at Bohemians would have been ones that looked at this and said, yeah, Stephen's right on this one. This one we have to bring in. Because if we were to go to a labour relations perspective, we could find ourselves, and even we have to be careful a little bit as well, where the figure gets too high. And that causes you...
Kills the league then.
Kills the league and causes you a bigger problem where clubs go, okay, we're not going to pay that. We pay as an amateur and we give them expenses in cash. And that's not where nobody wants to be. So there was a middle ground to be found, which we found. And what I knew what was going to happen when we brought in the minimum wage was it was going to mean that the middle guy was going to bump as well, because the middle guy, he was on maybe 550, 600, is going, hold on, minimum wage is 430. That's just below me.
Yeah. There's a knock-on effect.
So it knocked it on. And that's been hugely beneficial to the players. But being paid from the start of pre-season to November 30th has been hugely positive in both divisions. But it took a massive amount of negotiation.
Who are you negotiating with there? Is it the clubs themselves or the FAI or the department?
Everybody.
Yeah, right.
Everybody.
Because the money's to come from somewhere.
So it's everybody. So you're dealing with, obviously, the clubs in the Premier Division, the clubs in the First Division, the FAI, the league director, the chair of the NLC. So you're dealing with all them factors, all them different factions to say, this is the right thing to do. It's like the minimum of the pros that we're going to bring in the next couple of weeks. That has to be factored. You have to do the cost analysis. You have to do everything around it to sell it to the clubs to say, look, this is the right thing to do. Aside from the fact that you would expect in any industry that there's a minimum wage in, our industry is different, and we have to recognise sport is slightly different. So the negotiation of it was interesting that the clubs actually came back with slightly higher, because they knew that if I actually had gone to, from a labour relations perspective, that the money would have been higher than even what I was looking for. So it was a game changer for the players. Makes the league far more professional, and brought in a parameter that hadn't been there before. And
it's staggered. Like, so if I'm 17, 18, it's a little bit less.
It is, it is.
I'm living at home and have done as much expenses.
Exactly. And if there's accommodation that comes down again, and so there's all different factors in it. And this is what happens when you speak to stakeholders. The frustration that I would have had, and I still to this day have, is that when you put something to the clubs, right, and say, look, they just come back with you with, no. I can't, well, come back with, can you not come back with, well, Stephen, how about a dispensation for 1 year or something? But I get hugely frustrated by people who just go, no on what basis? Like, I've done the cost analysis, it's affordable, it's well within your budgets, we're just bringing it in to have a parameter setting so that nobody falls below that, and we're pushing the game on. But it's hugely frustrating when you just get a no. That just means lazy. Like, we spend a lot of time with players, and we have a player status committee within the federation, was something we built as well. So players have a platform now to discuss issues that they've got. So whether that's around refereeing, whether it's around pitches, whether it's around whatever it is, facilities, that we have a platform now that it's discussed, and then it goes to the NLC, goes to them to discuss it and come back to us with whether they agree, disagree, how we can do it. And we never had that before. So that's only in 2 years with some great guys on it, Sean Boyd and Rory Gaffney and Killian Cantwell, Brennan Clark, Roberto Lopez. So we've key players in a lot of our clubs and in the First Division who now, and the women's game, Anya O'Gorman's on it, to have a platform to bring forward how we make our game better.
When that deal was made, because it makes perfect sense, as you can see how that improves standards across the board, like players allowed to be proper professionals, and it allows them to focus on their football. Was it who signs off? Is it just is the money in the clubs already and they have to agree to it, or was there extra funding sent to the league? Or because obviously it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, I suppose when you look at the obviously from a financial point of view of our clubs at the moment, the team who finished bottom of our league this year's budget was €1 million playing wage. What we're talking about is a fraction of that, 1/10 of that. Okay. So the spend is already there. I know when you've seen the UEFA Solidarity money has gone up fivefold. So it's now 300,000 that you get as UEFA Solidarity money before the season even kicks off. So our Premier Division clubs are getting that already.
Okay, yeah.
Aside from the fact that the top 4 teams are going to be in Europe next year. So the dream for all our clubs is Europe. 40% of our teams get Europe. So there's quite a good chance of you getting Europe, which brings in, obviously, that's where the revenue is from a financial perspective. 1.7 is the minimum that the league winners will get. And it will go up. If you look, TNS and Larne have qualified for the group stages now. Like, you would think of it on the Champions route, any team within our league should get to the group stages, and now you're into 4 million. So that's why when you look at our league, that's why everybody's pushing to get up.
The rewards are there.
The rewards are there. What we have to, and what we're working on with the federation, and we're meeting in 2 weeks' time, is oversight, because there is losses, and they're quite big at the moment, and it's worrying.
Most clubs now, or
I would say every club, bar your top one, which is Rovers. Everybody else will lose. I would say, between $500,000 to $250,000 is being lost every year, every club. We need to get to a point where our clubs are losing nothing every year, and we have to put in parameters to ensure that our clubs don't do it recklessly. there's not enough oversight from the FAI from a financial perspective. I personally feel it needs to be outsourced. I think we need to bring in an external company in.
As in to audit the club.
To audit clubs, whether it's that BDO or whoever. I would like it to stay within the federation, I have to be honest. I'd like it to stay there because you have a better feel for it.
Would that not be done in the licensing part of things?
Yeah, but it's not.
All right, okay.
So just be clear here. Dundalk have just hit a bit like the Titanic. It's just hit an iceberg. How did that happen? We're supposed to have a salary cost protocol, 65% of your revenue can only spend on wages. If that was being properly managed, oversight on that wouldn't have happened. So it's very clear that isn't being done. Our ownership testing is not at the level it needs to be at. That needs to be tighter, it needs to be better. So when we put them things in place, there is going to be some pain for everybody for a little bit, because we just cannot continue to allow clubs run up this type of debt and think that that's acceptable. It's just not. And the sustainability of the league and now, most clubs around the world make a loss, but it has to be a reasonable. Like if you're losing the bounds of $500,000 to $250,000 and your wage bill is only $1 million, you're going, oh my God, we're in big trouble here. Like there's something here that's not right. So we expect from the meetings that we're going to have with the FAI that the oversight will be better, that the finance department in the FAI will be tighter and closer to it, in that licensing as a whole will ensure. Now, you're never going to cover everything, so there's going to be things that will happen. I think we can all accept that. The Dundalk scenario that's just happened, I don't think is acceptable. You've players signing new contracts literally weeks before the club is threatened to go out of exile. Like that's just not. There's something fundamentally not right there, and we have to be careful as well as a game and as a for credibility, that a club that has 121 years of history can't just be given to anybody who rocks in the door. There's got to be stuff done to ensure that the best interest of the club, that this new ownership model is coming in and understand what their plans are. Have they got the financial backing to do it? And that's important that we have that in place.
Okay, and that's well said. No, I appreciate it. Just to give the hindsight that, because I think a lot of people, well, me personally, when I heard Dundalk were in trouble, I was kind of surprised the players weren't getting paid. When we heard about this last year or 2 years ago about the 430 coming in and stuff like that. You think those days are behind us, But again, I'm sure when you're on the inside of it, probably nothing surprises you this day.
No, it wouldn't. No, it doesn't. And like the challenge every day is there's always something different, So whether it's an issue around the player, whether it's an issue around an operation he requires, medical, whether it's around us trying to negotiate the minimum wage or negotiate minimum amount of process.
Would you have issues there? Say if a player picks up an injury tail end of the season and their contract's just about to expire, like who's paying for that operation? Who's paying for those medical costs?
Yeah, we have, thankfully, it's one of the things we have covered in the contract. So the player's covered for 3 months after his contract expires medically. So that covers it. And then if it goes beyond that, we step in then. So we don't have an issue in relation to that. So that's never been an issue. Our clubs have been very good, to be honest. A guy who picks up an injury at the end of the season, majority of if they pick up an injury, that 3 months covers you. But I have to be honest.
You'd get your operation in that
exactly.
time. Yeah.
But I have to be honest and give our clubs credit here. I've yet to have an issue where a club will not rehab a player back to full fitness, even if he's not going to be at that club.
Okay, yeah.
Where we do run into some problems if the player is based outside of Ireland, so he's based in the UK, that can be difficult because he will have this operation, but his rehabbing, unless he's coming back to pick a club, I don't know, Waterford or Dundalk, that can be difficult, obviously. But credit to our clubs on the medical side of things, they've been excellent, really, really good, and their insurance policy is rock solid.
Brilliant. Now, look, one last thing, Stephen, just to kind of mention, because we had a little chat beforehand. You obviously had just personally now, just talking a little bit about the health scare you had a couple of years ago. Is it okay to chat about that? Because most lads that listen to this podcast are lads similar age brackets to ourselves. Yeah. And in general, we're fairly fucking useless when it comes to things when we get health scares and asking for help and going to see doctors. Is it okay? Because I've heard you talk about this before and I thought you spoke really well about it. Is it okay to chat about it for a minute?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So just a back probably start this. So COVID, so we've been 2021. We played 5-a-side in the FAI, playing a sort of small pitch just off the main pitch with the international team training. Noel Mooney actually was in as general.
They're tasty games, to be fair.
Yeah, they are for me anyway. So I was playing. I just remember running back, right, and just feeling not great. It's something just caught me like my chest or something. I just thought, gee, that's a bit strange. Anyway, I didn't pay much attention to it, if I'm honest. And then COVID kicked in, so we didn't play 5-a-side anymore. I had passed blood one day, put it down to eating of a new sort of Texas fried chicken that was at the back of the house. And I then started to find heavy sort of fatigue. And I had been, I remember I got to skip into the house and I was, like a lot of people, during COVID, just starting to do stuff that you wouldn't normally just to clear out garage. I remember going to use an axe and somebody just felt exhausted to sit down. Like, and had I think Ryan, my son, was with me and Callum was there as well. So anyway, that was grand. I said, Jesus,
And you would have still kept yourself quite healthy and fit, like, wouldn't you?
I would have been, I would have been fine. Yeah, I would have been fine. I would have been still in perfect health. As far as I was concerned, I was in perfect health. I had, so that was fine. Then all of a sudden, I start getting these really hot and really cold flushes. So I was at one stage, t-shirt stuck to me, sweating, or freezing cold. I go, what is going on here? Went in and got blood tests. I think it was maybe 2 o'clock in the day, maybe 2 or 3 o'clock one day. I went.
How long had you got the symptoms for before you?
So I would have had this for maybe about a month. So it was just after Christmas. So it was January, mid-January to late January when this 21. So I got a blood test done, and I just wasn't well. I knew I wasn't well. I didn't know how bad it was, but I wasn't well. So when I got a blood test, I got a phone call that night about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock from the doctors, just saying, you're in trouble here. You're in big trouble. Your hemoglobin is at a level, you're going to collapse. Like, you need to get yourself straight in the hospital. So got into the hospital, went into the hospital, actually emergency in the market, which you can imagine how difficult that is.
So it was a war zone, yeah. So it was January of COVID as well. Yeah.
Horrific, absolutely horrific. Got me on a bed. It took them about 3 days, and they realised I had actually got VHI. So I got moved then down to the market private. Went in there. They went to a colonoscopy, and I'd done all of their tests. They couldn't find anything. So went, had the colonoscopy done. They wheeled me down. Guy done the colonoscopy. I sort of, you're sedated a little bit for that. And I sort of remember coming through, and I was getting wheeled back. But the one thing I noticed was there was a group of them coming.
Walking down with you towards
There's a group. Yeah. And I go, okay. So I sat down. They closed the door. It was maybe 4 or 5. And don't forget, drunk over, you're on your own. Ain't nobody else there. And he just came to me, says, you've got cancer. He says, it's testicular cancer. Or sorry, it's intestine cancer. And Dr. Munslow will be in with you in the morning to go through it. And sorry about that. Shook my hand and walked out.
Fucking you left sitting there.
And oh my God, I didn't know what to do. Like, I immediately kicked into sort of, hey, this thing ain't going to beat me. This isn't going to beat me. I'll be okay here. Won't be worrying. Family rang, everybody, and everybody was devastated, obviously. Dr. Munslow came in the next day and sat me down and said, look, here's the situation. It is stage 3 cancer. It has gone through 2 of your organs. So it's gone from your large intestine into your stomach. The blood that you passed was the cancer bursting through, and then it seals behind it. So he was explaining to me then why I didn't have any abdominal pain, because the start of the growth, everything was just moving under it. So I had no blockages, no nothing. So there was no signs.
Scary that, isn't it?
So this is going
inside you.
Yeah, so this thing's grown up through you and was going to kill me. And the signs I got was just luck. Like, I was lucky that I sweated, lucky that I done whatever. So I said, how big is this operation? And he said to me, look, at this moment in time, he said, what I'm looking at is, it'll be just the end of your stomach. If I hadn't got it, and I suppose this is the key thing. He had said to me, if I'd have got it earlier, it was keyhole surgery from the side. Being grand within it. So I went in and had the operation. It ended up being 9.5 hours, the operation. They took away 3/4 of my stomach and my large intestine. When I woke and came through, he came out and he said, look, it was a bit worse than what we thought. It's going to take you a year to recover. And
what was your reaction? Were you just relieved that he got it out of you? Or were
I was relieved he got it out of me, but I was in high intensity at this stage. And again, nobody could see me. I was there on my own. There was nobody to help you, nobody to deal with you. You had family, obviously, but they couldn't. There's nothing that they could do. And I have always been a person that needed people around me. I never travel on my own.
But you're used to that environment for football.
Yeah, exactly. And I always need people around me. And I, for the first time, found myself on my own and started to understand that I probably, and to be honest, my life changed dramatically after. Anyway, everything changed, but I found it difficult to deal with it on my own, but learned to be on my own. It was just something I never had to do before that. And
not many people can do that.
No. And so in high intensity. So if somebody with you, I was in there for, I think it was a week, where at one stage I'm lying there, and the only thing I'm controlling is my breathing. So everything else that I'm looking at everything else is being controlled. All my movement, belt, everything is being controlled. I have about 9-10 machines hanging out of me. And that was difficult. But when Munslow came in and I said to him, look, how bad is this thing? Like, and I said, you've got it on this. He said, do you know what, Steve? He said, I'm going to somebody else next that I couldn't get it. I got it in you and I got it out of you. Now it's up to you. You've got to do your bit now. You've got to recover. You've got to mind yourself and you've got to do your stuff now. But I've got it. right? Now he said, you're going to have chemotherapy, you're going to have all that treatment and all the rest to make sure that we've killed everything around it. But it's over to you now. And the minute he said that, and the realization from my perspective is that I'm lucky here. There's people he's gone into that he can't get.
Perspective is the word you said there, yeah.
And he has to shrink in before he can operate on it. So from that moment on, the biggest thing I struggled with, of all the things I struggled with, is 44 staples all the way down. I had horrific recovery because I'd got an infection, and if I told you some of the stuff I went, it was awful, right? It was absolutely horrendous. But the mental side, it was the most difficult I found. I started to worry about stuff I never worried about before in my life, and I could not understand that. I had to after about 3 months when I came out of hospital, I had to go on antidepressants and have been on them for 2 years. I've just come off them maybe 6 months ago. And anybody who knows me, the lads will tell you, I've been the first one to ring you up, see how you are. I very much care about people. And for the first time, I felt vulnerable, and I've never felt that way before. And I didn't like it. Right? I played centre back, kicked lumps out of people. Yeah, I would have been a tough guy. I would have been running a union, would have taken on anything that I could. And now I found myself vulnerable. And I struggled with it badly. Still, probably to this day, still struggle with it. Changed people around me, changed my life a lot after it. And I just found the mental side of it the most difficult. The physical side of it, it healed. It took a long time to heal, but it eventually healed. But the scars mentally are stuff that even still now I struggle with. I get very heavy fatigue every so often. If I sat in a chair, I doze, and it's just part of the medication. But besides that, or to the side of that, is that mental strength to say you are going to get better. I remember when the nurse is saying, this will pass. But you've got to be mentally strong enough to be able to handle what you're dealing with now. But it will pass. And it did pass. Okay. I'm in a lot better space now. Hell of a lot better space now. Friends have been amazing. People around me have been incredible. Family have been brilliant. And that's key, I suppose, to everything. I've got friends now that, like even people like Darren Maloney and Neil Doyle, Stephen Bent, guys who've been friends of mine now who you really need to be on the end of the phone. And one of the key things when I was recovering was I'd lost so much weight. I was 11 stone.
I can only imagine, when you get your stomach takes.
So I didn't want anybody to see me.
Yeah.
So I locked myself away for about 2-3 months, didn't move outside the door. And two of my pals, Alan Moore and David Kennedy, refused to go away. And they went into the house, knocked on the door, and refused to leave the garden until I came out.
You wouldn't come out to see them, no?
No, because I didn't want, I had seen some of the family's reaction to me. And it was a double take when they saw me. I'd lost so much weight, and I couldn't handle how people who saw me reacted to seeing me. I couldn't handle it. So I didn't see anybody. I locked myself away in a room, and COVID obviously was there. I was told if I had got COVID, it would have killed me due to my immune system was so down, and I had been getting chemo. I was getting chemo on a monthly basis.
But for you, that fear of what you thought other people were thinking about you was probably the biggest thing that took over, rather than the fact you had 40 odd staples down your stomach.
No, exactly.
It's mad, but it's perfectly understandable. Most lads will be guilty of the same train of thought, I think, especially when you have an identity, like you're leading people in what you're doing, not just in football. You've always been probably a leader of people, and again, quite confrontational and things as well. So I can see where that, as you're saying there, like that. And I think a lot of lads would struggle with the same situation. It's perfectly normal. And I've heard you speak about this before. That's why I was just keen to chat to you about it, because I think it's a really good eye-opener for maybe someone potentially could be listening who maybe had a similar incident maybe last week or a week before, was just fobbing it off of something that might just go, do you know what, maybe I better fucking go and check this out.
And I thought that is the most important thing. Is, and I think the one thing that when I came through it, and I've spoken at different events about it, is getting yourself checked. And it is so important. Like I have my staff just getting checked now with Randox Health, and they're getting checked at the moment. Is that it's really important. And it's just a regular checkup. And what, even getting my bloods didn't tell me I had what I had. It just said there's an irregularity there, and just go and get checked out. And there's so many guys that I've spoken to who went and done it. Alan Colley, Alan had gone and get checked straight after Stuart Bourne. And others have come back to me and saying, do you know what, I actually feel better now because I've gone and got it checked out. And I've played with teammates of mine, Colin Hawkins, who's recently diagnosed with blood cancer as well, that it is really important that we have a bit of a platform and that we say, go get yourself checked out. But the most important thing is how you deal with it then after that. And you do have to make changes. I've had to make changes in my life because for too long I was worried about what everybody else thought. I need to look after myself for a while. And I made decisions that were best for me. And because for too long I was making decisions that was best for other people. And that long term isn't the right thing to do. So something like this made me realise that I needed to look after myself. And that point of I was afraid of what other people thought. when I'd gone out to Alan and David in the garden and I'd been there for about half an hour with them, I remember walking back in and going, and the lad said, gee, don't look too bad. You're grand. I remember going back in, okay, maybe I'm not so bad. And I could feel then just that little mental turn. I was just going, okay, maybe I'm not too bad. And then suddenly things started.
Got you out of your own head, like.
Because again, you keep looking in the mirror going, Jesus Christ, that's not me. Like, that's somebody else. That can't be me, but it was me. Like, went from clothes from a extra large to a medium and a small. Like, nothing fitted me in. And you think you're not going to recover. You think you're not going to get back. But the reality is, and you do need to talk to people. Like, there was ARC, were a group that I dealt with in the Mart Hospital. They were brilliant. And to anybody out there, that there is, you are always going to get better. It will happen. It's just believing that's going to happen, and believing that you are going to get better, and you will get better. But it's believing that. And if you allow yourself to slip and think, oh no, this is the way I'm going to be forever. It's not. It's not. But you've just got to have that belief that you are going to get better, and that you're going to do everything in your power to get better. And having that mentality is really, really important. And the other thing is about it is taking the help and assistance. I never took a tablet in my life. I don't know what you're like. I never took a tablet in my life. And I was reluctant initially to take anything. But once I took the help and support that was there, whether that's antidepressants, whatever, they stabilised everything, and I was far better for it. And then in time, then you come back down off it. And thankfully today, I'm on a couple of tablets for different things, but not that heavy. That heavy. Now look, stuff in my life, alcohol had to go because you can't function.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous enough alcohol as it is. So I've come off that. I wouldn't have been a big drinker anyway, but I've come off that. My diet is on form. I'm not in as good a nick as you, but I'm in the gym.
Now there's a couple of years between us, to be fair.
I'm in the gym.
You don't look like someone that's been through what you've been through only a couple of years ago, and that's the best compliment I can give you. Like,
but it's important.
I wouldn't fancy getting a shoulder off you, being honest. You're going up for a 50-50.
But the gym is really important. I go most days now. It's right beside me in the aquatic centre, and you feel better, healthier, more active. And that was one thing I didn't do enough of as well when I was coming out, was trying to stay active. I just lay there. I should have been doing more and walking, talking.
But that's probably hard to get out when you're self-conscious and worried.
But you're worried people saying,
exactly.
But you shouldn't be worried about that. That's the thing. And the people who really care about you, right? And they really care about you. They'll make sure you're okay, and they'll make sure that they're not going to say something that's going to make you feel any worse than you already are. It's just the look of people. That was the one that got me, when people looked at me and I could see their faces go, gee. That really got to me, and that was why I tried to avoid that as much as possible. But thankfully, as I said to you, I'm in a better space now. I've spoken to lots of people over the last while who've had similar experiences to me, and I'm always open to talking to anybody about my own experiences and anything that I can do to try and help people to understand what they have gone through, what they're going to go through. And it's important, I think, that when we get platforms like the one you've given me, that we do talk about it and say that, look, time is a healer, and you will get better, and you've got to believe that.
Thanks, Stephen. Look, I really appreciate your time today, and it was great to mention that, because again, I think if anything, this could be the most beneficial someone takes from the conversation if they're in that particular situation where maybe something's happened in the last couple of weeks that they're fobbing off. So look, this has been fascinating. Again, I could go on for hours and hours here talking about football with you, but I'm conscious you have a lot of stuff to do. You're a busy man. So look, thank you for your time today, Stephen. We took huge value from this. Just with anyone who's maybe like listening to things and wants to find out a little bit more about the PFAI in particular, where should they go?
So we have a website, www.pfai.ie, and all the details are there in regards to this association. And again, Stephen at pfai.ie, if anybody wants to contact me directly around anything that we've spoken about today, if they've a young player or a young son that wants to be a professional footballer, just drop me an email and I'll speak to them. There's lots of people now with agents contacting them and whatever else, so the help is there and support is there from our perspective. So yeah, anybody who has anything that they've taken out of the conversation we've had today, that's how they can contact me.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time today, Stephen.
No problem.